there was tremendous corruption against me. If we feel there's corruption, we have a right to go to a foreign country. And just so you know, I was investigated. Okay, me, in my campaign, I ran, I won. I was investigated. You won't say that, will you? I was investigated, and they think it could have been by UK. They think it could have been by Australia. They think it could have been by Italy. So when you get down to it, I was investigated by the Obama administration. I was investigated. So when these people talk, but as far as I'm concerned, what I want to look at and what we want to investigate, anything having to do with corruption.
I think there's something, I think all that we've discussed, premeditated fraud, FISA court, dirty dossier, spying on a president, outsourcing of spying. I feel there's something so big in play that I think the deep state knows it. Andrew Weissman kind of referred to it in his comments. Don't take heart in the McCabe thing, because this is much bigger than you ever will know. That's what I believe. It's going to shock the conscience of a nation in the end. Do you agree with me?
Yeah, I think Crossfire Hurricane was a danger to democracy. I think it should never happen again. I think it was set up to destroy the Trump campaign, not protect it from Russian influence.
Shock the conscience of a nation. What we are about to witness will boggle the mind of the average human. The DOJ is investigating if Obama admin hid and or manipulated info on Russia meddling. U.S. Attorney John Durham is reportedly investigating if Obama administration officials hid and or manipulated evidence about why and what they knew about Russians' election interference into the 2016 U.S. presidential election. The New York Times reported questions asked by Mr. Durham, who was assigned by Attorney General William P. Barr to scrutinize the early actions of law enforcement and intelligence officials struggling to understand the scope of the Russian scheme, suggests that Mr. Durham may have come to the view with suspicion. Several clashes between analysts and different intelligence agencies over who could see each other's highly sensitive secrets. Mr. Durham appears to be pushing a theory that the CIA, under its former director John O. Brennan, had a preconceived notion that Russia was trying to get a particular result out of that investigation, and he was nefariously trying to keep other agencies from seeing the full picture. Now, the Times noted that while some are skeptical of Durham's investigation, others are not, because he has a long track record of investigating law enforcement and intelligence agencies under both the Democratic and Republican administrations. The Times further noted that one of the things that Durham is looking at is how the intelligence community came up with the political judgments, including its assessment that Russia was not merely sowing discord, but specifically thought to help Mr. Trump and defeat Hillary Clinton. The Times also reported that investigation is looking at multiple communications between different intelligence agencies that involve several different incidents that happened. And buried deep in the report, the Times revealed that the officials had fought over access to emails that Russian government had previously hacked, which included emails from former President Barack Obama. And Durham is reportedly taking a very close look at how information from foreign governments, specifically Australia and the UK, Italy, how their governments, or how the CIA played a role in sparking the suspicions at the FBI that a Trump campaign, somebody close or connected, was somehow connected to Russia. Yeah. never forget that former FBI Director James Comey, former Deputy Director Andrew McCabe, Brennan, Clapper, they all went on a 2-year book-selling tour and went on to multiple different shows on the left, mainstream, lamestream media such as CNN or MSDNC, all of those channels, and they pitched the narrative of, their innocence, and then it started shifting that they were taking orders, that they, it was Obama, it was he who tasked us, were the exact words at one point from Clapper. But here, check this out.
If it weren't for President Obama, we might not have done the intelligence community assessment that we did that set off a whole sequence of events which are still unfolding today, notably Special Counsel Mueller's investigation. President Obama is responsible for that, and it was he who tasked us to do that intelligence community assessment in the first place. I think if it weren't for President Obama, we might not have done the intelligence community assessment that we did that set off a whole sequence of events which are still unfolding today. President Obama is responsible for that, and it was he who tasked us, which are still unfolding today. If it weren't for President Obama, we might not have done the intelligence community assessment that we did that set off a whole sequence of events which are still unfolding today, which are notably Special Counsel Mueller's investigation. President Obama is responsible for that, and it was he who tasked us to do that intelligence community assessment in the first place. I think.
All right, joining me now with reaction, former U.S. Attorney Joe DeGeneva, House Oversight Committee ranking member Jim Jordan, and former Deputy Independent Counsel Robert Ray. Doesn't get better than this tonight. Joe, what does the impressive scope of this new probe initiated by Barr tell us tonight?
James Comey, Brennan, and Clapper have said to themselves, which one of us is going to pay the Barr bill? The Barr bill is coming due, and Durham's appointment means that the already occurred meetings between the Attorney General, the CIA Director, and the Director of National Intelligence have now focused on a laser that the core of this conspiracy began with John Brennan and ends with John Brennan in London and D.C. and the Democratic National Committee. This is very serious business, and for the first time, I now believe that some of these guys are going to go to prison.
Wow. You mentioned Brennan tonight, and Congressman Jordan, we got some profound sound from both Brennan and Clapper. This was Brennan today explaining what's going on with this new probe. Let's watch.
It went through a rigorous due process within the Department of Justice, the FBI. It was approved by the FISA court. It went through all of those steps. What they're trying to do is to uncover something that they will misrepresent as being part of this deep state effort to try to undermine Donald Trump's election.
Well, Congressman Jordan is right. I mean, this isn't a question about whether the procedural steps were followed. This is a question that first is exploring bias and whether that had an impact on what was or wasn't disclosed to the FISA court, which, to answer your question, Laura, is a serious issue. There's a case in the Supreme Court about this, Franks versus Delaware, which all prosecutors and agents are familiar with, and it's a serious question now that's going to be explored by a prosecutor after all. This is not duplicative of Michael Horowitz's investigation because the IG doesn't have prosecutorial authority to actually bring charges, but in this instance now, as the result of Bill Barr's appointment, there is going to be an investigation, the purpose of which is to determine whether or not any crimes were committed, which is Joe DeGeneva's point.
With the history and the reputation he has, what's the most dangerous thing out there? Someone who has nothing to lose? Bill Barr made a lot of money. He didn't need this job, right?
You never kicked the bear.
Oh, no.
And let me tell you something. Horowitz has already concluded that the final 3 FISAs were completely illegal. He's now on the brink of finding that the first FISA was completely illegal. Durham has already used a grand jury in Connecticut. They've already gotten documents. He's already talked to the intel people.
How long has this been going on? Do we really know how long this...
Durham's been working for a couple of months. So the bottom line is this. This is now big time. This is where Brennan needs 5 lawyers. Comey needs
Are
5 lawyers.
Are they lawyered up?
If it weren't for President Obama, we might not have done the intelligence community assessment that we did that set off a whole sequence of events which are still unfolding today, notably Special Counsel Mueller's investigation. President Obama is responsible for that, and it was he who tasked us to do that intelligence community assessment in the first place. I think
as you know, the president now has sitting members of this government. You have the Attorney General traveling the world now, meeting with U.S. intelligence partners, trying to find out, in his view, whether they participated in some sort of Obama administration-led effort to undermine President Trump in the last election here. You also know that John Durham, who is a former prosecutor, senior Justice Department official, he's pursuing his own investigation on the origins of that probe. Are you concerned that Barr's or Durham's investigation will find wrongdoing and seek to punish former intelligence officials?
Well, I don't know. I don't think there was any wrongdoing. I think at the time all of us were trying to navigate a very, very difficult, politically fraught, highly charged situation. I know for my part, my main concern was the Russians and the threat posed by the Russians to our very political fabric. And the message I'm getting from all this is apparently what we were supposed to have done was to ignore the Russian interference, ignore the Russian meddling and the threat that it poses to us. And oh, by the way, blown off what the then Commander-in-Chief, President Obama, told us to do, which was to assemble all the reporting that we could, that we had available to us, and put it in one report that the President could pass on to the Congress and to the next administration. And while we're at it, declassify as much as we possibly could to make it public, and that's what we did. And it's kind of disconcerting now to be investigated for having done our duty and done what we were told to do by the president.
Fair enough. And as you know, we're just a little more than a year away from another election, which the intelligence community is concerned, and others, Republicans and Democrats, concerned that Russia will interfere again, and other officials.
Thank you.